I have 4 o'clock, as long as our technical staff is ready to go. Linda, you're ready?
Teresa, are you ready?
We're live on Facebook now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Chairman, we are ready.
Good afternoon. It is Wednesday, May 26th. This is the 5th meeting of the 2021 Johnson County Charter Commission for our 2nd meeting of the month and our 5th meeting overall. I'm Greg Musil, the chairman of the commission. Linda, would you please call the roll?
Wendy Bingesser.
Wendy Bingesser, present.
Mike Boehm.
Mike Boehm here.
Karen Brownlee.
Not arrived yet.
Okay. Vicki Charlesworth.
Vicki Charlesworth, present.
Jim Denning.
Denning here.
Jane Dirks.
Jane Dirks, present.
Jimmy Gaona.
Is not arrived yet.
Okay. Ted Housh. Ted,
Here.
thank you. Randy Hutchins.
Randy Hutchins here.
Thank you. Chris Iliff.
Here.
Laura Klinging-Smith.
Laura Klinging-Smith, present.
Joy Costin.
Joy Costin, present.
Brent McCune.
Brent McCune here.
Eric Michelson.
Eric Michelson here.
Ed Peterson.
Ed Peterson here.
Don Rattan.
Don Rattan is here.
Leslie Riverola.
Leslie Riverola is here.
Don Roberts.
Don Roberts is here.
Kyle Russell.
Al Russell here.
Paula Schwach.
Paula Schwab here.
Brenda Sharp.
Brenda Sharp here.
Greg Shelton.
Greg Shelton is here.
Greg Smith.
Greg Smith here.
Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas here.
And is Karen Brownlee on yet?
No,
And is Jimmy Gaona on yet?
no, he is not.
Okay. And Chairman Musil.
Here.
Okay. So we have 23 and 2 are not here yet.
Thank you. And I know I had received an email from Karen Brownlee that she will be joining us a little later. So Linda, you'll try to keep track of when they join the meeting, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Thank you all for coming. We do have a quorum. Thank you all for your dedication. We're 5 meetings in. We've got a lot to go, and everybody's still hanging in there. So thank you. First item on the agenda under approvals is consider and approve the agenda for today that was circulated Monday.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda for May 26th, 21.
Brent McCune moves, and do we have a second?
Leslie Riverola seconds.
Leslie Riverola seconds. Anybody have any questions about the agenda as presented? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That passes without objection. Second item is consideration of the minutes from our last meeting dated May 10, 2021. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the May 10th, 2021 minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Denning,
Ken, I
second.
saw you moving your hand toward your mouse, so you want to second this? I can see each of you try to find how to unmute fast enough.
Chairman, I think I had Denning second it.
Yeah, Denning second the minutes.
Moved by Brent McCune and seconded by Senator Denning. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries without objection. Thank you for moving us along. I think we're all anxious to get to the presentations. We have 4 today, so we're going to try to fit those in. Under new business, I'm going to take most of these and then let staff fill in where I misspeak. On discussion of chat on Zoom, the question that's been raised is the fact that when if we as commission members use the chat function during the meetings, those comments are not available to the public. And therefore, we prefer if you have questions that you want somebody to answer, either ask those verbally or submit them by email to Linda afterwards, and we will get answers from the presenters as we did when County Manager Ferguson did that. So rather than use the chat for any going back and forth or commentary that's not immediately available to the public and it's harder to capture, we'd like to use that mainly to say I'm at the meeting or I have to leave early so that Linda can reflect that in the minutes. Does anybody have any specific questions about the chat function? Thank you. Again, as I've mentioned before, we have no shrinking violets here, so please speak up, ask your question, and if there simply isn't time, submit it to Linda or to the Charter Commission email, and she will get it to the presenter and we'll get a response, and that will be part of the archived record for everybody, including the public. Future meetings, we do have confirmation that we will, primarily all of our future meetings will be at the KU Regents Center, KU Edwards campus, I'm sorry. And that will allow us to have a hybrid meeting where members of the commission can attend virtually or in person. And the public can also observe through a live stream. Unfortunately, they are not available for our June 14th meeting. So I think we will continue to do all Zoom on June 14. And then on June 23, we will plan on being at KU Edwards campus. We'll get you more details. Not sure, Maury, if we know what the KU Edwards campus protocols will be on June 23rd. We'll certainly let you know ahead of time if there is a mask requirement or not. And if there is not one, we will still attempt to social distance to the extent we can, given the space in the auditorium. Anything to add to that, Maury?
Thank you, Chairman. No good summary. I just want to apologize for their inability to host us on the 14th. It may seem at first blush that it should be easy to find a location, but when you start factoring in space for a body of 25 plus support staff, social distancing, ability to accommodate the public, amplification with a group that size, and ability to host it virtually, the possibilities, even in Johnson County, get slim pretty quickly. So I'm pleased with KU Edwards campus staff willingness to work with us. Again, unfortunately, they already had a commitment on the 14th, but should work well going forward.
And Maury had indicated to me that there were some future dates, if you take out our full calendar, where we will probably have to do an alternate location or Zoom only because the KU Edwards campus room is not available. But we have time to work around those. I gather they're a ways out, Maury, so we'll let everybody know about that. But I think that's a good home. It's fairly convenient toward the center of the county, and it's a nice facility. So,
yeah, thank you, Chairman. And to be specific, other than this next meeting, there are only 3 other dates over the next year that they couldn't accommodate us. So pretty good availability.
And it may get to the point where we want to take a break off one of those meetings, but we'll see how we go. Okay, any questions about future meeting location?
Craig, this is Schwak. I have one question. That is, if we are not able to attend in person, how much advance notice, if any, does staff need to help accommodate us?
I could probably speak to that so that in a way I don't have to worry about it. I will be sending out a Zoom invite to everyone that is all the 25 members, the staff that we have considered part of the charter staff, and then any of the people that have been invited to speak that night. I will send out a Zoom invite every meeting.
Like you've done this before, Linda, organizing a herd of cats. Thank you. Perfect. Good question. Other questions? If not, we'll move on to the website. It's mainly an announcement. Belinda, you want to update us on the website?
Yes, I just pretty much, I will share my screen real quickly. I'm not going to go through all the different parts of it, but it is live. It is, I will announce it that it's at charter.jocogov.org. And this is the website. And as we go further, I will be updating all of these things. I've got the presentations from last time out here. After this meeting, you know, within probably 5 to 7 days, I will get them added here sooner if possible. The minutes are here. As you can see, we have the old videos attached. So this is live. We do have the contact if people want to send us information and all of that. So I just wanted to make everyone aware, and anyone that is listening on Facebook, that our Charter Commission website is live. That is where you'll be able to go and see the meeting agendas, agenda packets, any of the other information. And of course, we will still post the meetings on what we call our BOCC public calendar, where we have been before, and giving the link of the Facebook or whatever fashion that we're broadcasting on. But I did want to just make all of you aware that this website is public now.
Thank you, Linda. Not a simple task to collect all that and first build the website and then collect all the archive documents. Any questions for Linda about the website? Hopefully some of you were able to visit it after she sent the link out yesterday. Okay. And that will continue to be a living document. So the next item on the agenda is the rules of order. The executive committee had proposed these and distributed these back before right before our May 10th meeting. Hopefully you've had a chance to go through those. I think rather than just take a motion at first, does anybody have any questions, suggestions, additions that they'd like to bring to the attention of the commission? Mayor SWOT?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You know, having gone to law school and practiced for a number of years, I'm reminded that if you get 5 or 6 lawyers in a room, you get 5 or 6 different opinions. So it might be possible in a group this size, as we near the end of our work, for some of us to have alternative viewpoints from the majority. And I'm wondering if in that case, rather than having 5 lawyer dissenting opinions or something akin to that, if we might not think about, I'm certain everyone is open-minded and open to everybody's viewpoints, but as we narrow down to a set of recommendations, there could still be some viewpoints that might not be reflected in the final product. I'm wondering if it might not be useful to establish a sort of threshold. Let's say 1/3 of the body needs to be concerned with 1 or more recommendations before there would be some kind of paper that represents an alternative viewpoint.
I do recall the 2011 document included a minority report. I don't believe the rules that in 2011 set a minimum threshold on that. We'll just open that up for discussion. Basically, to establish a threshold for the inclusion of, I'll call it a minority report, but alternative views on something, if it would be to accompany the official report of the Charter Commission. Any thoughts on either including minority reports or opinions, or whether there should be a threshold?
Mr. Chairman, this is Greg Smith.
Yeah, Greg.
I'm highly in favor of a minority report. There's been one in the past 2 charter commissions since they've started this. I don't see any reason to go away from precedent.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm looking away because I'm going to pull up the 2011 rules. Yeah, okay. Let me read what was in the 2011 rules, because I knew there was a report. The 2011 rules, section 6D stated, minority report, members of the commission not in agreement with any or all aspects of the final report may submit a minority report to the county commissioners. So there was an express allowing of a minority minority report on any issue by any member, and no requirement of a specific threshold. Oh, thank you, Linda.
This is the proposed rules now, is
Okay,
what I've got
right.
pulled up.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
at the appropriate time, if necessary, I'd make a motion to adopt that rule for a minority report.
From the 2011 language.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Why don't we go ahead and make that motion now, and we can discuss it.
I'll second that motion, however it's needed.
Motion by Greg Smith and a second by Zach Thomas to include as section 6E, the language from the 2011 rules on a minority report, which in that document were part of section 6 and letter D. So a minority report by any member on any aspects with no threshold. Discussion by folks. Linda, could you take that down? I think we've seen it that way. I can see everybody if they're
Yes.
their hands raised electronically or physically.
Well, Paula, what do you think about the threshold? I was going to ask Paula. She initially encouraged a threshold versus no threshold.
Well, I think it's unworkable to, if we begin to think about 24 members of the commission, there could literally be 24 different opinions on some particular topic. And that is not helpful to the commission as guidance. And frankly, it's not terribly helpful to the public at large.
Mr. Chairman, there's no history that that's ever happened before in the past with the commission. I don't see a need to limit a minority report. They're already in the minority, and now you're going to silence any voice that they would have by not allowing them to have the minority report.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor Mickelson.
it's Michelson. Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry, Eric. I do that every time.
Happens all the time. I like to be confused with the golfer, especially this week. So appreciate that. I think there's middle ground here. I actually agree with Greg Smith and Mayor Schwach. We should have the ability for a minority report, but I don't know that anybody wants or should allow for 25, or I guess it'd be 23 separate minority reports. So I'm in favor of a threshold. I don't have strong views about what that is. I think if there had been a threshold, we certainly would have had a minority report at the last convening of this, because as I understand it, there were several commissioners who signed on to that minority report. And I would think whatever threshold we pick should be below that, whatever that number was. No one's trying to silence anybody here. I just think it's a practical good suggestion to have some type of a threshold. My 2 cents.
Okay, let me just reflect that there was a minority report filed by 10 people. And then there were additional comments separately from the minority report. Well, by at least 3 different people on multiple issues. That helps anybody in the discussion. Kendrick.
It seems like if there's a minority document, if you call it a minority report and people can put their group dissents or their individual dissents, my hope is that we work with collegiality and we come to general points of view. I don't know that, I think if we put thresholds on it, we're looking at sort of maneuvering amongst ourselves to gather support and the like. And to me, it just seems like if there's a document where you have a point that wants to be made to the public, we have that minority document that can be used. And I don't know that we need more rules than that.
Senator Denning.
Thank you, Chairman Musil. I think I'm really uncomfortable putting a threshold on a minority report.
I allowed a gazillion of them, and it's just important for a minority report to be forthcoming if the minority wants to state their position. I think putting a threshold on, I'm really uncomfortable with it.
Thank you. Jim, is that an amendment to limit it to 1 zillion minority reports?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Ed Peterson, I think I saw you raise your hand.
Did. My recollection is when the executive committee considered this proposal and we looked at the former rules, we were a little concerned that the broadness of the former rules tended to encourage dissent rather than working toward some form of consensus. I tend to agree with Mayor Michelson that there needs to be some level of support for a position to end up in the final report, as opposed to just a group of individual opinions. Not that the individual opinions are not worthwhile, it's just that, I think we're, as a commission, supposed to make recommendations, and where there's a minority, we ought to show that there was a substantial group of our commission that agrees with that minority report. I think that's the most helpful to the public. And our thought at the executive level was certainly not to in any way discourage new opinions, dissent, disagreement, anything like that. We were just hopeful of reaching consensus on most issues and being able to kind of narrow down the perspectives on those issues where we couldn't reach consensus.
Also, item 6B does say that any member can submit a proposed amendment to the final report, so that can be done on an individual basis.
Leslie.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have been listening to this discussion, and I'm not terribly comfortable with the idea of limiting a minority report to a certain threshold of participants. I mean, I think all of us signed up to participate in the Charter Commission with the county's best interest in mind, with the understanding that we are a group that's supposed to be marching towards hopefully a collective effort. But to the extent that there are points that we can't get there, I think requiring a certain number of people to sign on really kind of negates that purpose. And I think the county commission would probably, even if it's from a minority of folks, needs to hear those opinions. And I think limiting those I really think it undermines the process.
Brenda Sharp, did you have your hand up? Oh, Brent McCune. Oh, I see a hand up. Mike Beam has his hand waving.
Ultimately, our charge is to make recommendations to the commission. Whatever we recommend, they have to vote on and put to a public vote. I don't think letting one person have an opinion in a report is going to, everyone should see those opinions. So I don't think we should limit it to a certain number. Ultimately, the commission is going to focus on the recommendations of the majority and take that to the people. So I don't see having, I don't care how many pages trail, they're only going to take action on the things we ultimately recommend as a majority. So I don't see a reason to limit it.
I don't see anybody else's hands physically or electronically raised, and I do want to move on, but I've told you before, I'll try not to be a dictator. If I am, you let me know. The motion before us is to adopt the language from the 2011 report, which allows minority reports from any member with no threshold. So I'm going to go ahead and call the question on that and ask Linda to call roll.
And I will make a statement at this point. Karen Brownlee is in the meeting. I do not show that Jimmy Gaona
Yes.
has.
And it was easy.
Is Jimmy Gaona in yet? Okay.
All right, so a yes vote will be to include a minority report with no threshold. I guess, is there anybody that wants to move to amend that to add a threshold? Because that seems to be the question. Nobody has expressed objection to a minority report. Is anybody interested in offering an amendment? Zach Thomas?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the sentiment of the minority report, and what Greg said should be valued, but I also think that there should be some consideration for not having a litany of responses following. So I don't know if we need to procedurally vote on Mr. Smith's motion and then.
He said he was getting ready to go out to Lewisburg to do a job out there.
Chris, you're unmuted.
And then see if that passes in that form, or then move subsequently, or do you want to vote on an amendment first?
Well, if we vote on it, the way it's stated, then I think it's passed. If we want to amend it to include a threshold, I think we need to amend it to include a threshold. Now, if it fails, that might mean somebody wants a threshold. So we'd have the floor would be open for a new amendment. So maybe we should just vote on it. A yes vote is to include a minority report with no threshold. Everybody have a good sense of that? A no vote means you either don't want a minority report or you want a threshold, I guess would be the alternatives.
And point of order, Chair. If this passes, this means that any commission member can add any written material that they want to the final report.
That's how I would read the rule from 2011. There were about 4 pages of individual comments on individual issues, and then there were several pages of a minority report filed by 10 separate members of the 25-member commission. Okay, does that answer your question, Mayor? Joy Costin had her hand up.
Yes, Chairman. If we vote with the motion the way that it's stated right now, there is a chance that it will be voted that there will be no minority report, is the way that it's phrased. Is that the intent?
Well, I think if the motion fails, the floor would be open again as to the rest of the rules, including a different amendment proposal to the rules as they were circulated.
Okay.
So I don't,
Sure.
I want to do this parliamentary wise, but also informally to that extent. So Zach,
Sure.
did you have your hand up?
Chairman, could I, what Joy just said, I have that the motion would be to include a minority report with no threshold. Is that correct? At this point is what the motion is?
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification, Linda. Thank you.
Okay.
That's right, Greg. Isn't that right? Greg Smith. So if somebody, okay, Kyle Russell.
Could we hear the language of the 2011 rule that we are being asked to adopt again? I believe that was Mr. Smith's motion was to go ahead and adopt that rule from 2011. I'd just like to hear it again before we vote on it.
Sure.
Greg, I think I have it in section 6 of the 2011, and
Yeah,
it's
section 6D.
right. Minority report, members of the commission not in agreement with any and all aspects of the final report may submit a minority report to the county commissioners.
It was any or all aspects, not any and aspects.
Sorry, any or all aspects.
I have Zach and then I have Leslie.
This may be out of turn, Chairman, but I will say that if this motion does not pass, I am prepared to move that we adopt language that includes a threshold of 5 people for a minority report.
Well, I can't tell everybody how to make their motion, but if the issue is threshold versus no threshold, I'd rather get that out of the way first via an amendment, and then we can move on to the full motion. I can't make anybody make a motion to amend it. If there's no motion to amend, Leslie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was gonna ask, Chairman. I'd respectfully like to call the question on the motion as it's been presented. I think we've had a pretty lengthy discussion on this, and I'd like to see where people are.
Okay. Question's been called. We'll go ahead, Linda, call roll. Yes would be a minority report with no threshold. No would be something else.
Wendy Bingesser.
Wendy Bingesser, yes.
Mike Boehm.
Mike Boehm, yes.
Karen Brownlee.
Karen Brownlee, yes.
Vicki Charlesworth.
Mr. Chairman, I can't support this without any kind of threshold, so I'm going to vote no.
Jim Denning,
Jim Denning votes yes.
Jane Dirks,
Jane Dirks votes yes.
Jimmy Gaona. Actually, he has not come into the meeting yet. Tedrick Hausch,
Cedric Couch votes yes.
Randy Hutchins,
Randy Hutchins votes yes.
Chris Iliff,
Yes.
Laura Klingensmith,
Laura Klingensmith votes yes.
Joy Costin,
I too will vote no, waiting for a threshold.
Brent McCune,
Brent McCune votes yes.
Eric Michelson,
No.
Ed Peterson,
Ed Peterson votes no.
Don Rattan,
Don Rattan votes no.
Leslie Riviera,
Leslie Riverola votes yes.
Don Roberts,
Don Roberts votes yes.
Kyle Russell,
Kyle Russell votes no.
Paula Swak,
Paula Schwak votes no.
Brenda Sharp,
Brenda Sharp votes yes.
Greg Shelton,
Greg Shelton votes no.
Greg Smith,
Greg Smith votes yes.
Zach Thomas,
Zach Thomas votes no.
Chairman Musel.
Chair votes yes.
Motion passes.
I have a vote of 15 yes and 9 no.
That's what I have. The motion passes. Any other proposed changes or suggestions to the rules as circulated? Greg Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I did have a question on section 5C, where it says upon the yes votes of X members of the committee. Do we have a number there, or is that something we're going to discuss?
That's an excellent point, Greg. Thank you. The executive committee. Okay, that's in section 5C.
Actually, Chairman, I noticed that we have section 5 is voting, and then we have another section 5. So the charter amendment should be section 6, and report to the Board of County Commissioners should really be section 7. I will make those changes.
Would anybody like to re-vote on the executive committee numbering skills? Thank you, Linda. So it would be in what is shown in your rules as section 5 charter amendments. We had section C, which didn't choose a number of members of the commission, but thought we ought to leave that up to the commission. Rules would allow anybody to bring any amendment that they propose. There would be some threshold, and we'd allow that person to explain their proposed amendment, have some initial discussion, and then a vote. And we wouldn't move forward to a full consideration of that unless there was a sufficient interest in the commission to do so. We did not presume to pick a number. Greg, thank you for pointing that out. So I don't know what that number is. It takes 13 members to recommend an amendment to the charter. It would seem like it ought to be something less than that. And I know we talked about 8 or 9, but we will open it up for discussion. Kyle, one of those lawyers is going to have one of 6 opinions.
I'll move to insert the number 9 where the X is.
Thank you. Is there a second to Kyle's suggestion of 9?
I'll second the motion. This is Mayor Schwak.
Thank you, Paula. So it's moved and seconded to place 9 in there. Again, anybody can offer an amendment and have the opportunity to present it. after some initial discussion, and we intentionally did not try to define that, but before we spend an inordinate amount of time on it as a commission, we wanted to make sure it had enough support for discussion. You don't have to be for it to vote as one of the 9 to discuss it, but that's the purpose of that kind of filtering mechanism. Is there any further discussion?
My rationale for choosing 9 is that it's the lowest number that's more than a third.
They said there'd be no math. There's no further discussion. I'm going to take a chance and ask if we can vote on this by voice vote. If we have a lot of no's, we'll go to a roll call. All those in favor of inserting 9 as the number of votes to move an agenda amendment to full consideration, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
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 Okay, I think that was Greg and Jim. Are there others?
Was that Greg Smith that voted no?
Greg Smith
Yes.
and Senator Denning, I believe.
And Jim Denning. Okay.
With that, we'll go ahead and adopt that motion and fill in the blank with a 9. We'll renumber the rules otherwise. Other questions on the rules?
One statement I would like to make, just to make sure everyone is clear, because it's a little different sometimes, and rules of order under go both ways, but under section, what I would call 5, let's see, yes, 5 voting. C, it's actually on the second page. When you get to it, it says you will vote with member voting of yes, no, or present. Present would stand as though you did not vote at all, you abstained.
Okay. And one other thing I want to mention, because it's slightly different than the 2011, is we chose to use Robert's rules as an authoritative guide, as opposed to a mandated fallback position. I think I mentioned it to you in April when you asked me to chair this, and I agreed, was that I do believe in parliamentary procedure. And a majority of this group can do whatever they want, basically, by challenging the ruling of the chair. So rather than try to look at this is how nerdy I am, because this is Robert's Rules of Order, the current edition, rather than looking at that and having 6 lawyers or others trying to interpret it, we'll use that as a guide, but ultimately 13 people on this commission will decide whether a ruling of the chair is fair and reasonable or not. So that's how I intend to proceed. Greg Smith.
Just a question on that then, Mr. Chairman. There are some motions under Roberts that are non-debatable. Is that part of the authoritative that we're going to follow that, or is that no more?
I don't have a list of all the non-debatable ones, Greg, but I would think we would try to follow that. But in the spirit that we talked about earlier with Minority Report, I don't want us to be so formal that we cut people off that have a sincere or heartfelt desire to speak on something. So I would anticipate exercising that sparingly.
So is that a long way to say that, no, we're not going to follow Roberts for that?
Yes, I think that's right.
All right, thank you.
And I'll take direction in between meetings or at meetings on Robert's rules. My 4-H background and other has served me well, but I don't claim to be an expert. Is there a motion to adopt the rules then? Mayor Michelson.
Yeah, I'll move that, Chair, but with one comment, and it's this, and it didn't matter in this case, because I think everybody was done talking, but just as a point of order going forward, especially if there's a contentious or a split vote, calling the question is actually a motion that needs to be voted on. It's not the prerogative of the chair or the any member just to say the words and we stopped discussing it. And I think it was fine here because there was nobody else wanted to say anything, but just going forward, I think that one could matter a little bit. And then with that, I will move to adopt.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with that. I was almost ignoring Leslie because we had already exhausted the discussion, but she did call the question. It should have been voted on as to whether or not to call the question. Is there a second to Eric's motion?
Brenda Sharp, second.
Moved and seconded, moved by Eric Michelson and seconded by Brenda Sharp to adopt the rules as amended. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries without objection. All right. We got to move forward. It's 4:40 and we've got too many people already today, and that's my fault. So actually what I'm going to do right now is, if Jay Leipzig is on, Jay, are you on?
We do have,
Yes.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Jay, if you will not be offended, I'm going to cut you loose and have you
Okay.
come back next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Well, I
That's fine.
apologize for it, but plan on being at the June 14th meeting.
Okay, all right, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening or good afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you. Prioritizing the departments. We now have 20 responses to the request for prioritizing. Unfortunately, it did not narrow down in any meaningful fashion what we're going to be looking at, because almost all of the areas had at least 13 people that said they wanted to hear about it. They definitely wanted to hear about it. So the executive committee will go ahead and move forward on those. I think we will probably exercise some discretion in smaller department areas in shortening their presentations so that we can start moving along and getting all of these done, and we can get our County 101 done so we can move into the actual discussions about whether there are aspects of the charter that need to be evaluated and amended. So what my suggestion is going to be for June 14th, we'll now do the planning and development department that was scheduled for today. Corrections, emergency management, and Med Act. I think we can fit 4 of those in because we're not going to have as much business to do. So we can start doing at least 4 different departments and maybe more if they're smaller. So there was nothing in the agenda today because we were waiting for the poll results. But plan on planning, corrections, emergency management, and Med Act. As part of that, I had sent around, or actually Linda sent around, I don't know if it was early today or late yesterday, the document about just authority, which we put together to show what the statute tells us we're supposed to do, what the charter tells us we're supposed to do, some ideas of what we want from presenters as homework before the meeting, so we don't have to spend as much time on the pure basics of the department. We've asked them to tell us, what do you do? What's your role in county government? Where do you fit in the organizational chart? What authority do you have? Who do you report to? And then some budgetary information, probably with an inclusion of your full-time employment. And then that document also included that homework is intended to be in written form to us before the meeting. And then we're going to ask the presenters to, again, tell us what they're charged with doing, what's their budget and reporting authority, how does the current structure of the county government help or limit the ability to fulfill that mission, and what challenges do you foresee going forward that this charter commission should consider, or that the 2031 charter commission might need to consider. And then kind of suggested questions that we might think about ourselves as members of the commission. Those are ideas and guidelines. And if we have specific questions now, again, we've tried not to adopt anything in the same meeting it's been presented. So I just wanted to put those forward and hear if there were any immediate comments to that. If not, certainly comment between now and June 14th. We're just trying to find a way to focus us on what our task is, which if you interpret it broadly is everything. And if you interpret a little more narrowly, it should be function and operational structure of the government. So somewhere in between there is a happy medium that can help us reach our goal. Any initial comments on that draft? Please, if we miss something, if you want to add to it or have some suggested revisions, would you get those to me between now and June 14th? And I'll share those with the executive committee and we can talk about them on June 14th. But the goal is to get to presentations at the start of the meeting from here on out. I don't see any hands raised with questions. So I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Well, the item 6 is continue to think about what do you want to ask current county commissioners and the former county managers. Send those to Linda now. You can start sending those now. She will collect them. So when we get to the point of that, we'll be able to give those to those folks in advance. Ready for presentations? Okay, we're going to start today with the Airport Commission. Aaron Otto. Aaron, if you could unmute and identify yourself, we will let you go. It's 4:45, so we have an hour and 15 minutes. If you could limit your minutes to 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll take questions on the Airport Commission. We'll have the same amount of time for wastewater and public works. If all three of you would stay around at the end, if we have any additional time, we could take more questions on the first two presentations. But with that intro, Aaron Otto.
Sure, thank you very much. Linda, do you want to do the presentation or should I throw it?
Either way, would you like me to?
That'd be great. Thank you, Linda. As Linda's pulling that up, thank you for letting me.
Sorry to interrupt, but remember, since when she goes to sharing the screen, I won't be able to see the gallery of who's got their hands up. So if you have a question of Aaron when we get to the question period, just state your name and ask it without me trying to find you and call on you. Thank you. Sorry, Aaron.
You're welcome, no problem. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. The question kind of comes from where it is an airport commission and how we're a little bit different than a lot of different organizations within Johnson County government. We're one of those agencies because we're found in state statute. The state statutes are found in section 301 to 307 that give the power to the county commission to create an airport commission and delegate certain assignments and roles and responsibilities to it. So that's a little bit of background on how we got started. Next slide. Airport commissions for Johnson County, really, we inherited almost everything. The 10-second history is that if you can believe this, and if you're old enough, you remember it firsthand, Johnson County was home to Olathe Naval Air Station, which had 3 installations in Johnson County. 2 of them are still the county's airports, one at New Century with the same admin building still being used. You've seen that photo there. And the other one being Johnson County Executive, which was Morris Outlining Field. They both, as they were decommissioned, were transferred to their governing body. One went to Olathe. Olathe eventually sold to the county in 1967. Then they sold off, or excuse me, then they deeded over a quitclaims deed, the New Century facility in 1973. So the Airport Commission was created by the Board of County Commissioners in 67 with responsibility now for both airports. And they delegate decisions on development, land leases, kind of operations of the airports to that group. Each commissioner has one appointee. Then that body, both bodies have to come together and agree on hiring my position. And we'll talk a little bit about structure in a minute. Next slide. Great history though out here to say the least from the Olathe Naval Air Station days. And that's important to know because of what the airport still does. We have 18 full-time staff, 3,000 acres, lots of lane miles, both city street like lane miles, but also runways, taxiways to the 2 airports. And yes, your county government does run a short line railroad, which most people have absolutely no idea of. That's a legacy of the old Olathe Naval Air Station. When sailors and other goods arrived via train, we still operate a 6-mile short line railroad at New Century. Next slide. This is the all-important org chart, but I want to focus on the top just to make it clear. It's an interesting structure. Obviously, the Board of County Commissioners appoints the Airport Commission, and I end up reporting to both. So I think I have 16 bosses, 7 county commissioners, 7 airport commissioners, the county manager, and an assistant county manager. It takes both organizations to hire my position. It takes one of those organizations to terminate the position, which is kind of a unique setup. But that's our reporting responsibility back to Johnson County government as an organization. And my responsibility is to hire the staff to implement the goals and priorities of the airport commission, kind of like a city manager would do on a city level. Next slide. And so our mission is very simple. Our job is to promote aerospace activities. That could be leisure, that could be jobs, growth, promotion, whatever the case might be. And then also to do economic development and job creation. And you'll see why those have a symbiotic relationship here very shortly. This was just updated by the Airport Commission the last year to be very simple and to the point of what the two things that we do that are fairly unique in Johnson County government. Next slide. This is how, as a mission, how we do it. I'll let you look at this at your own leisure when you have a chance to look at these slides later. I know they just got turned in just in the last day, so I'll let you take a look at this later just to keep down on time. Next slide. So the two airports, just to give you a quick aerial, Gardner is to the west of this slide. That's Moonlight, and Olathe is growing to the north of this. This was the original Olathe Naval Air Station. This is where John Glenn learned to fly. He's got his military wings. This is where Bob Barker off The Price is Right learned to fly. I mean, there's incredible history out here at New Century. And what you see in that photo are the 2 primary runways plus the business park that's growing up around the airport on county-owned land. Next slide. This is Johnson County Executive, directly east, 6 miles, just over 6 miles. It's 151st Street on the north of both sides. A more typical GA airport with only 1 runway, but T-hangars, fixed-based operators is a very vibrant airport. To put it in perspective, your airports in Johnson County had 103,000 flights in 2020. I probably won't be able to say this again, so I'm gonna enjoy the year I can. In 2020, Wichita had 83,000 flights and Kansas International had just over 73,000 flights. So your airport system in Johnson County was the busiest in the state of Kansas and the busiest in the region as well between these 2 airports. Next slide. As I mentioned, I'm showing these couple different functions because we break down our entire budget, which you're about to see, into 5 cost centers: the airport, the railroad, the water system, and then the business park. So every dime in and every dime out comes through one of those cost centers, which includes the railroad. We serve 8 tenants here at New Century, where BNSF delivers cars, tankers, or cargo cars. And then our job is to do that last mile delivery, storage, move around, whatever the case is, on premises. Next slide. And then there's the water distribution system we inherited from the old Olathe Naval Air System. So we provide not only water to the airport, but to the entire business park. And there's some very, very large food producers in the business park. So we move about 1 million gallons of water a day through this facility. And we are a wholesale buyer from the city of Gardner and the city of Olathe that we don't actually treat water, thank goodness. Next slide. And then the thing that pays for much of this is the business park, where there's over 60 businesses on long-term land leases, and it's those land leases that generate revenue to support the airport operation, especially infrastructure at the 2 airports, I mean, runways, taxiways. But it's an incredibly diverse group, from a small organization, maybe 8 employees, to Carry Ingredients makes all the chocolate-covered raisins and almonds for Costco. Unilever, now Upfield, is the only place in America that makes Country Crock, and I cannot believe it's not butter. I mean, it's an incredible mixture of folks out here. Garmin's fleet is here in addition to a research facility that they have on site. So it's a very vibrant business park, to say the least. The goal is to continue to expand this business park, to keep generating new land leases, to generate more revenues, to try to support the Johnson County airports and their infrastructure. Next slide. The economic impact, we just did the study with Siri last year. It's almost $1.3 billion. And the bulk of that comes from those different tenants in the business park, to say the least. And I would note this number, when you see the number of jobs, that's a hard number at 5,100, is about 1,000 short due to there's a large office building at New Century that's currently vacant. That's 470,000 feet that used to have between 1,000 and 1,200 employees. That's not reflected in this number. So that number would be even higher in a year until this last summer. Next slide. So just one other thing this is a little bit different, where the business park rolls off for over $430,000 in property taxes in 2019 to county government. It rolls off over almost $2 million. It's now over $2 million in taxes to every taxing jurisdiction. We also roll off about $405,000 in what are from the land leases back to county government for services we get for, like, central services. And if you think about, most of this land would be on an ag basis. So the fact it's now being taxed, of course, with the improvements, it's a much more valuable proposition. Next slide. Just a couple more on the budget and then be happy to take any questions you have. So the revenues on the left, you'll quickly notice when you can do simple math, the 6.6 million in 22 is what our estimates are. And in 22, the expenses are 8.6. The reason for that is that loss of that very, very, very large office building tenant. That building was built privately by North Supply, United Telecom became Sprint sold it off into Embark became CenturyLink, and then come June 30th last year, that building went vacant. But it is a county-owned building that was deeded over once it was built to county government. And so that cost us $1 million in revenue and added $1.5 million in expense for maintaining that empty structure in a mothball status. That's why our revenue and expenditures wouldn't balance. Otherwise, you'd see a dollar for dollar match here. So that's where that gap comes into play. But this is broken up by those cost centers we referred to earlier, the 2 airports, the water system, the railroad, and the business park. And I will say that we have cost recovery overall at about 87% this year. From 2005 to 2020, the airports were self-sufficient of tax dollars. And that's a big push financially from the FAA to try to be as self-sufficient as possible. And in the country, there's only about 24 airports that have achieved that status that are general aviation, i.e. not ticketed commercial passenger airports. And 2 of them were your county government airports. Obviously, with the loss of that tenant and a $2.5 million swing and an $8 million budget this last year, that's been a little bit different, or starting this year, that's a little bit different, and why cost recovery is only at 87% for the enterprise fund. Next slide. And then this was kind of some direction we were given to look at just kind of a SWOT. I'm happy to talk through this if you have questions in the future. I would just point out a couple items on here. Excitement for the future is a master developer to help us start expanding over 800 acres that the FAA has released for development, so we can expand the business park and keep rolling on new land leases to try to support, again, matches for FAA grants or just general operations of the airport to try to reduce the tax liability as much as possible. The relationships, some of the challenges though, obviously having a 470,000 square foot office building vacant is not ideal. The aging infrastructure at the airports, we have some of the oldest buildings in the county. And in fact, in 52 years, we've only built, 54 years, we've only ever built 1 building for the airport. Everything else we still occupy is original to the World War II era days from Olathe Naval Air Station. Eventually we'll become landlocked. That will be a challenge, and certainly a threat in the future is just limited funding for grants, be it KDOT or the Federal Aviation Administration. Their funding's been pretty flat. When you start factoring in inflation on construction like concrete and asphalt, that's obviously starts to become kind of a decline, to say the least. I think there's just one more slide, and this is my unabashed promotion for buy your tickets early for the Airshow. We're not doing day of ticket sales, but this is the first time the Blue Angels have been at New Century since it was Olathe Naval Air in 1952. And they are super excited about coming out here, to say the least. Some of Saturday the 3rd is already, some of the positions have already sold out, but there's still, everything's available on Sunday the 4th. So hope to host you and tens of thousands of other folks from the region at New Century this year for our first major air show in a number of years. How was that? I didn't time it, but I tried my best.
Well, I'm a bad chair. I didn't time it either, Aaron, but I think you were certainly right around the 10-minute mark. Good job. And I assume a select member of the Charter Commission will get to fly the back second seat in one of the Blue Angels flights, and we'll see you once that. Questions for Aaron about the Airport Commission?
Aaron Hutchins. Aaron, as the intermodal continues to grow and there's more interest in large companies such as Amazon, FedEx, etc., needing to bring in more air cargo as well as fly out air cargo, have you been in discussions, and can you talk a bit about what we could potentially offer from New Century, as well as potential threats of a new airport coming in?
No, I appreciate that very much. So part of that 800 acres that I referred to earlier as new potential development is directly adjacent to both of the current runways at New Century. And so there's part of that plan is reserving some of that land for aviation businesses only, which could include a multi-100 acre cargo freight carrier as well. There's designs to build another taxiway to serve them, in fact, off of runways 422 and 1836 north-south runway. There are no active discussions on that at this time, but that was part of the explaining this to the FAA and releasing this land for economic development, was to try to set aside and preserve that next to the airfield space for aviation businesses as long as possible. And hopefully that's all that will ever be there.
Aaron, or Chairman, may I?
Zach Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Otto, thank you for being here to present today. I'll tell you, for those that have not been out there, the facilities at both Executive and New Century are phenomenal. But from friends of mine that fly, and maybe you could expand on this, or if it's not just a personal, the hangar space is extremely limited. What's been torn down and rebuilt is fantastic and better than most that anyone would see, but it's my understanding there's a 5-year wait for people to get into a hangar. What are the thoughts? I saw your mission statement was to promote aerospace activities, and we're doing great commercially, but for citizens of Johnson County, how do we increase their ability, or is there any plan for that?
That's welcome to what has been a challenge of my 3 predecessors and myself. We are working on a process to replace, these are T hangars is what Mr. Thomas is referring to. We are just coming up with a process to replace 50-year-old T hangars that need to be, they're way beyond their service life and replaced, but not seeing a net expansion. And you're correct, we have anywhere from a 3 to 5 year wait list. The challenge is the rate it would cost to build these. I can't charge a rate high enough to do the site prep and to rebuild or to build these new hangars. Today, most hangars cost about $315, and we're starting to creep that up after many years of being flat. However, to build the next 2 hangars on the best site we'd have to charge around $600 a unit. So unless we start subsidizing those single-use hangars, that's about the only other way we could see that expansion. At any point, we're open to doing a land lease for a private developer to build a T hangar, and I've had a few come in with interest. I never heard from them after the first time we've talked, because it's a very complicated apartment complex to get to run with the hangars, to say the least. But that is the age-old question, that there is a wait list at every airport in Kansas, I would imagine, especially in this area. But you're absolutely right. There are people, Fort Scott, Leavenworth, Lawrence, that all live in Johnson County, but don't have a place to put their plane, which kind of defeats the purpose of having the convenience of a plane. So an ongoing issue. We'll continue to look at it. The focus right now is rebuilding what we have to make sure it's safe and serviceable. But that's the balancing the pin on the needle's head there of what your rate can be to try to cost recovery those over a 20 or 30 year bond period.
Aaron, this is Brenda Sharp. Good to see you. Aaron, can you just share with the commission what the considerations you think should be top of mind for us about our airports relative to Mid-Continent? And, you hear lots of talk about competition versus collaboration. Just share a little bit about your thoughts, what you think we need to know about that relationship.
So there's always seems to be an interest. I see if this helps answer your question, Brenda. There seems to always be interest on commercial carriers service, and there's really kind of 2 ways that could go. One would be kind of another airport similar to MCI. The reality, a lot of airports live on the support of FAA grants through a trust fund based on user fees. The FAA has been kind of clear that until our area of Kansas City as a metropolitan statistical area hits 3 million population, they're not interested in having 2 commercial airports that they have to support. And that's always been the challenge for someone like a Southwest or somebody else moving down here, that there'd be a lot of infrastructure. The runway's there, and the runway could handle anything, but the cost of a terminal and some of the other aspects that have to be built at New Century are pretty significant and steep hill to climb. So unless there was a huge influx of other public money or private money, that's kind of our sticking point on the one route for commercial service. The second is ultra low carriers. You can go and build a terminal, car rental lots, all the things that go with it, new tower in our case. And you might attract somebody, you may not. There's some groups that have done that and waited 10 to 12 years to get a ultra low carrier to come in. The challenge is they literally can pull stakes within 6 days. And so you may do a lot of that work. They may test the market, find it's not suitable, and then decide to move away. And so we see ourselves as a general aviation airport. As you can see, the reason our numbers went up so much in 20 was that we didn't have commercial airlines. So the charter service went through the roof, private GA went through the roof last year, which is why our flight numbers were so much better than MCI. That should not happen and probably won't happen again, just because they were so depressed on the commercial side. So we work as a Kansas Airport Association in the state of Kansas quite a bit together. We work with the MARC Aviation Committee, which is a good information exchange and work. Our former assistant director now runs Wheeler Downtown, and she's one of the first people I call all the time when I have a question about how something's handled and how they do work down at Downtown Airport. So I think there's a lot of good collaboration in that sense. There's a little bit of rivalry between Lee Summit and Downtown are probably our biggest like airports in the region, but certainly we all know that there's plenty, frankly, of business to go around, as Mr. Thomas indicated, like with the T hangars, for example.
Joy and then Tedrick.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Aaron, for being here and the work that you do. We've used that the Johnson County Executive Airport for many, many, many years. A couple of threats that you had on your SWOT analysis are interesting to me because one is both a strength and a threat, and that's workforce. Can you talk a little bit about why there is a challenge in recruiting future talent and what this commission can perhaps do to ensure that we have a ready flow of talented workers to be interested in that arena?
Sure. And I'm speaking a little bit more for the business park in that sense. When we do business retention visits to anywhere from, again, an 8-person firm to a multi-100-person firm, 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week shift operation, we usually hear the concern about available workforce and affordable housing. And I'm sure Mayor Roberts down with LPKC hears similar concerns as well. And some of that has to do with just location. Some of that just has to do with the market. This predated 2020 though. But I will tell you, certainly what an organization pays makes a difference as well. When Amazon arrived at New Century, I know for sure that I've heard a few of the other firms had to raise their rates since someone could easily walk across the street and start a new job for a couple bucks more an hour for very similar work. And so I think this is kind of the global issue of just having an able workforce that's readily available, that is willing and interested to live in this part of the county and able to as well. As we talked about with, I didn't put it on this list, but we just did a survey. We got back literally Friday from business park tenants, and more than one of them identified affordable housing as one of the challenges, not only just Southwest Johnson County, but certainly it's countywide, that kind of limits some of the challenges of getting that workforce here.
So it's really attracting those anchor businesses to the business park. That's where the workforce has to be accessible.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that.
And hopefully that never becomes a strike against us in the process of trying to do recruitment either to LPKC or to New Century, that we are seen as an area that just doesn't have the workforce support. If we put in X plant or X distribution center, that we'd be able to find a workforce to fill it.
Thank you.
Hey, Aaron, briefly, I was just curious, what is the turnover and the ability to hire air traffic controllers?
So both of our towers are contract towers, which means they are paid for by the federal government through a contract tower. We're responsible for the equipment inside of it and renting. In one case, we have to rent the tower from the Army because it's still part of the Army post. But they've been fortunate that I don't want to speak too much for them, but we've been very fortunate that we haven't had any limitations on our side because of the contract nature of it. However, in many cases, folks will learn how to do that and then go for work on the federal side. And there is limitations once you're a federal contract tower, federal tower controller, your ability to come back to the private sector side when you retire is limited to 0. So there's a forced mandatory retirement of the FAA, I think at 57. And so some of those folks, when it's a smaller airport and not as much traffic, would like to continue to work, can't go work for an airport like ours through a contract tower because of retirement rules on the federal side. And Senator Moran and others have been sponsoring legislation to try to end that prohibition so that there is a more ready pool of folks to come here. But typically we have 2 to 3 people, depending on the time of day, at each of our airport towers. And I think they've been pretty good at keeping them staffed. I've not heard about long-term shortages in that sense. And while there's a break, I'll just say anybody who ever wants to come see one of our 2 airports, I'm happy to, I love showing them around. I love the history of this place. So by all means, my contact information I'm sure has been provided to you, or it's find it on the website. Happy to give you a 1-hour windshield tour of New Century, especially when you get a little bit more of the flavor and sense of the railroad, the business park, the water system, and just what it all goes into the airport and how they complement each other. Be happy to show off Johnson County's assets for sure. Anytime. Happy to.
Dawn.
What work are you doing to attract a tenant or tenants to fill the void of the tenant that left?
Yeah, so the county commission declared that building a surplus so that we could put it up for sale or to try to attack a tenant or multiple tenants. At that size, there's probably going to be many. CBRE has been retained as a real estate agent to try to help conquer either goal. And unfortunately, we started this process in February of 2020. And when we did, that was the 13th largest building in the United States that was available for sale. And it was one of only 2 in Kansas City that had 100,000 feet or more available for lease. Enter COVID, There are now 15 spaces in Kansas City with 100,000 foot or more to lease. And I don't know the national number, but I know it's grown. And so our challenge will be, as people are reassessing their footprint for working at home versus working in the office, is probably the most likely case we're going to get is either somebody who's expanding in Kansas City or somebody who wants to move from a coast to try to experience cheaper, quality, less expensive quality life, but a greater quality life, and probably in many cases, but also less expensive business operations. So there's efforts through RFP responses, request for proposal responses, to just pushing it out as an opportunity. Because despite its age at 40 years, it's been maintained like a building that the tenants owned, because they envision being there for the long run, and 40 years is a pretty good lease long run. So it's fully stocked. It's like they walked out yesterday. Every desk is there, chair. The only thing missing is pens, fake plants, and television screens and computers, but everything else, including the kitchen, is good to go. So I'm trying to keep optimistic that we'll find some solution, hopefully in the next year or so, or some other alternative is going to have to be discovered, because at some point, losing $1.5 million on your operating expense to carry an empty building is not sustainable.
Aaron, this is Greg. I'm going to take advantage of the chairs with the last question, and then we're going to move on to our next presentation by Susan Pekarik at Wastewater. So Susan, if you'd be ready. But a lot of what you've talked about is private sector stuff on public sector property. Is the reason we have to continue to do that because those net positive revenues support airport operations that would otherwise have to be subsidized from some other tax source?
100%.
Why are we so heavily involved in the private sector?
So one of the questions I often get is, when you go to an airport commission meeting, you talk about the railroad, water, business park, what about aviation? But you said, Chairman Musil, exactly why we have all of that. There's two reasons. One is to generate money so that it reduces or zeroes out the tax support for the airports, because unfortunately airports are like swimming pools. In many cases, they're a public amenity and they have so much infrastructure. My civil engineering humor would be, there are two types of concrete that exist. There's concrete that's cracked and concrete that will crack. And that's constantly what we're doing, is chasing, in our case, a water system, a railroad, but tons and tons of lane miles, asphalt and concrete. The second reason, though, for having the space around the airport is you got to find compatible neighbors, ones that won't hopefully be upset by noise, ones that don't have tall structures, one that don't emit a lot of smoke, because those are all hazards, obviously, to navigation and the primary purpose of the airports. But you're exactly right. It's to try to make up to zero or as close as possible any kind of public support for these GA airports. That's why we spend so much time on attracting that business development and paying those leases.
Thank you. There may be other questions from members of the commission that they'll submit in writing, and then any responses you have will be shared with the commission and kept as part of the record of this effort.
Great.
Thank you, Aaron. If you can hang around till the end and we have time, there may be more questions for you, if that's possible. If not, we'll send them to you in writing. Thank you. Okay, wastewater. Susan, are you available? Talk about Johnson County wastewater.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Chairman Musil, and thanks to the commission. I appreciate you having me today. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about wastewater. I'm going to fly through the material since we don't have much time, but I'll be happy to answer your questions or provide anything that you need after the fact that I don't have included in the presentation. I do have a couple of members of my leadership team with me today. I've got Aaron Witt, who's our chief engineer, and I have Patrick McQueen, who is our director of business strategy. And Patrick just joined us, or rather rejoined us, but in this new role here in March. So he's going to kind of help keep track of things that we might need to provide later. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and then we'll find out why Linda has a backup copy in case I don't get this right. So let's see here. All right, can you see? Well, here we go. Can you see my presentation now? Everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can now.
Excellent. Okay, terrific. All right. So my name's Susan Pekarik. I have been with the county for 20 years. I'm been in this general manager role for 5 years now, after John O'Neill retired. You may ask yourself, what is wastewater? What does wastewater do? Well, our primary responsibility is to take the water that
that folks use in their homes and their businesses after they're finished with it. And we transport that via underground pipes to one of our treatment facilities, and then we clean it up and return it to the streams. The main purpose of that really is to remove the disease-causing constituents in the water, such as bacteria, things that can harm the environment and make people sick. So Johnson County Wastewater was established in the mid-1940s. This is a map of our service area. If you look up in the northeastern portion of the county is our oldest facility. It's the Nelson Complex. If you've ever visited household hazardous waste that the Department of Health and Environment operates, it's located at that Nelson Complex treatment facility. We serve about 500,000 in the county through 16 cities. So we're not the only sewer service provider in the county. We're the largest. Cities of DeSoto, Gardner, Edgerton, Spring Hill, and Olathe all provide sanitary sewer service. If you look at this map, these dotted lines represent the different watersheds throughout the county, but these brightly colored areas, those represent our service areas in the different watersheds. And we also serve the new Century AirCenter as well. The triangles that you see here on the map, those are the treatment facilities. So we have 6 wastewater treatment plants in the Johnson County wastewater service area. We have over 30 pumping stations, 2,300 miles of sanitary sewer pipe under the ground, and then 59,000 manholes connecting those, and multiple other assets, but those are kind of the high points. Ultimately, water that's generated then ends up at one of these treatment facilities, as I said, where we then clean it up. This map it represents that 2,300 miles of sanitary sewer pipe that's underground. It really shows the pipe as it went into the system. So these dark blue areas, those are the oldest portions of the system up in the Northeast. And that's about the first 15 years of development in Johnson County wastewater system. And if you come to the south and to the west, you see the yellow, orange, and red areas. Those are more recent sewers that have been installed within the last 20 years or so. Just kind of a fun fact, if you were to stretch the pipe that Johnson County wastewater operates and maintains, at 2,300 miles of pipe, if you stretched it would go from here to Philadelphia and back. So there's a significant amount of pipe underground that we take care of. And we'll get to the above ground assets here in a little bit. So when it comes to wastewater and where we fit in the organizational chart, we do report up through the county manager's office to the county commission. I currently report to the bureau chief, Scott Neufeld, who's also the budget director, previously reported to assistant county manager Joe Waters. The wastewater board effectively serves, or excuse me, the board of county commissioners effectively serves as the wastewater board. Johnson County wastewater operates as a utility, so we do not receive tax support. We're funded by our ratepayers in our service area. We do have 237 full-time employees, or FTEs, full-time equivalents. The largest number of employees, as you could probably imagine, are located within our operations and maintenance division, taking care of all of our facilities. And that's about 174 employees in that division. So wastewater has its own charter that we operate under. This charter was adopted originally in 1992 when Johnson County Wastewater consolidated its districts and became Consolidated Main Sewer District. It's been amended several times over the years. The most recent version is from 2013, and that's when that was really the last piece of a multi-year conversion to the user charge system that we have now. And so complementary to that update in the wastewater charter, excuse me, wastewater charter update in 2013 was the user charge resolution. And that resolution adopted the system of charges we have now to recover costs for operations and maintenance, as well as our capital improvement program. There's a companion resolution, connection fee resolution, and that adopted a standard table for water meter sizes for charging for connecting to the system then. So wastewater is funded through two separate funds. As I mentioned earlier, we do operate as a utility funded by our ratepayers. The funds flow through two separate funds, an operations and maintenance fund, and then a capital fund. A portion of the revenue that's billed flows to each of those funds. The operating fund pays for the day-to-day operations and maintenance, and the capital fund pays for debt service and for our capital projects. We do use performance indicators for both of those funds. For the operating fund, we're looking at days of cash. That's a fund that we have had built up in order to stabilize rates while we were constructing the Tomahawk treatment facility. So at the same time we were paying for the construction, the debt service on the construction there, we're also paying Kansas City, Missouri to treat that flow for us. So we have a plan to spend that fund down then back to our target ranges. The capital fund, we also have a performance indicator for that. We use debt service coverage. And so our bond covenants have a 1.1 coverage requirement, and we target a 1.2, having a 1.2 coverage on our debt service. Every year we update our financial plan as part of the rate development. We started doing, several years ago, we started doing a 10-year outlook on our rate adjustments. And the reason for this was so that we could plan and make incremental adjustments to the rates and avoid rate spikes. That outlook also includes a 25-year outlook on our capital improvement plan. Our goal, as I said, is really to make those incremental adjustments and not have rate shock. I mentioned the user charge resolution. So our residential customers are billed based on their average winter water usage, and our commercial customers are billed based on their actual water usage. I can answer any more questions about that if you have them later. So you can imagine with a system the size we have, it's valued at $3 billion. There's a lot to take care of. Above ground, we've got about 6,500 assets right now. With the Tomahawk treatment facility, that will approach 9,000 assets that we operate and maintain. And as our system continues to age, we need to make sure that we are maintaining it and that we're planning for that reinvestment when it needs to be renewed or when it needs to be replaced. So we use data to help us make those decisions about when the investment is needed, what's the right time and the best time to make it, always working toward that lowest life cycle cost. And it helps us put together then these more realistic budgets by using that data to help us understand when we need to be making the investment. This is just one example. We've got a lot of examples of our asset management program and you know, the wins that we get out of that. So we've spent a great deal of time over the last 35 years really improving, updating, and improving our performance in our underground pipe system, or what we call our collection system. So we've improved mapping, we have routine cleaning, we televise our system underground so that we understand where we need to target our investment to help us manage our risk. We want to hit those high risk areas, prioritize those areas. And if you look at the graph on the right, you can see that, you know, from 35 years ago to the last 14 years or so, we have been, you know, exceeding the EPA performance criteria for, you know, when they're looking for a high performing utility, they're looking at 2 backups per year or less per 100 miles of sewer. And we're below 1 backup per year per 100 miles of sewer. And this is speaking to dry weather backups. So this is really speaking to how we're maintaining our system. So this looks like a simple slide. There's a lot packed into it, and I'm happy to share more later if you're interested, because I see I'm about 10 minutes here. Bottom line is, you know, we recently had a big win. We were able to, we developed and then entered into an agreement with the state to provide, it's a 25-year plan for capital investment in our system. Again, taking care of that system that we have as it continues to age, but also making sure that we're addressing water quality requirements. So we've got those targets in our plan as well, but prioritizing those system-wide so that we can ensure that we're basically getting the most bang for our buck, the most benefit for our community. So this plan provides for a long-term investment in the system and helps us manage that risk. The purpose of this slide is to show how our long-term planning then provides for us to be able to, again, make those incremental rate adjustments and often implement rate adjustments that are lower than what we were projecting. So the blue bars represent what we're projecting in the prior year's plan. The green bar represents what was actually implemented. And what we do is through the putting the budgets together, as I had talked about earlier, using data to help us drive those decisions. You know, we plan prudently, and then we take advantages of opportunities as they come along. Low interest rates, refinancing debt. We've had other factors that have come along, including KCMO is a big part of our operating budget currently. So we've had some opportunities through their rate adjustments. And also in some cases though, where we weren't able to implement what we had projected, that did have to do with some of those KCMO costs. But as the Tomahawk treatment facility goes online, that reduces that volatility in our operating budget. The great story is with all those capital investment that we're making in the system and the capital investment we're looking at making in the system over the next 25 years, we still are among the lowest rates in the metro area. And we're in fact, in the middle there, you see a national average from National Association of Clean Water Agencies. And so we also sit below the national average as well. And what we see is this is an ongoing trend. In other words, we expect to continue to be sitting among the lowest in the region. I have to brag a little bit. Our treatment facilities regularly win awards for their permit compliance, for their how we are making sure that we're meeting any of our permit requirements. And I don't know if you can see in the picture or not, but these are platinum awards. And what that means is 5 or more years of 100% compliance with their permits. In any given year, we've got over 2,000 compliance points in our permits. And so achieving 100% compliance in 1 year is an excellent achievement. And we actually have a facility that is receiving a 15-year platinum award this year. So we're extremely proud of our team. They're definitely living our vision.
Susan, can we wrap up with the Tomahawk Creek? I know that's a big plan, but we're going to run out of time here.
So, well, that was my next slide. Great segue. So the Tomahawk Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility, this is the largest project the county has done. That facility was originally a plant. It didn't treat all the flow. We treated about 40% of the flow and sent the remainder on to Kansas City, Missouri. And we really had the 3 main drivers for replacing that facility. It was from the 1950s. It had old treatment technology, so it needed to be renewed, and the technology needed to be updated in order to meet future water quality requirements. And our cost of treatment was going up, and that was really due to the costs that KCMO was experiencing in executing their consent decree. And so we initiated construction of that project in 2018, and we're about 91 or 2% complete. We anticipate starting up that facility later this year. We've been through tariffs, historically wet weather, and now pandemic, and we're excited that we're still on schedule, on budget, and looking forward to treating some flow later on this year. And I'll end there. I've got one more slide in the deck, but I'll if anyone has questions,
Thank you for getting your slides to us in advance so people can follow along. Questions for Susan about Johnson County wastewater? You could take down the slide. I don't know if Susan or Linda is driving that so we can see the gallery. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Greg Smith.
Yeah, Susan, I'm just curious how the charter, the county charter, impacts wastewater. Is there anything in there that causes you guys issues, something that you think should be changed?
No, I saw that question in the email yesterday. I appreciate that. And we talked through that here this morning, and not really. And we couldn't come up with anything. We have, our charter has been adapted over time, and we couldn't come up with anything, Mr. Smith. So if we do, we'll share that. I think you have a future meeting, as I understand it, with some of the county managers. So we'll be sure to share that with her.
Ed Peterson, and then Randy Hutchins.
Susan, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Question, could you say a word or two about your relationship with the various water utilities that serve the overlap areas with wastewater, and maybe how that compares with other jurisdictions that have a combined water sewer service?
Sure. So most of our customers, probably more than 90% of our customers, are also Water One customers. And so the water purveyors, whether it's Water One or Water 7 or Olathe, I'm sure I'm missing a couple, we work with them and they provide the water usage data to us. We have agreements with them to do that. And then that's really what triggers our billing to our customers. And that's how we know, what to bill our customers, essentially. We know their usage that way, through how the water purveyor has read your meter and billed you. So is that what you were asking for, Mr. Peterson?
Well, that's a part of it. How would you describe, do you have a good working relationship with these utilities, or does that create issues because you got other governmental jurisdictions involved?
I think we've always been able to work through those issues. So I would say, we've even talked, we overlap when it comes to operations. As part of this integrated plan I described, there is a component where we look at affordability. And so we've even talked to Water One. I know they look at affordability. These are our common customers. So those are the things that we want to take into account as we're planning for the future. So I would say it's a good working relationship.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan. Randy Hutchins. I know a lot of local farmers in Johnson County, including myself, have utilized some of the sludge coming from your plants. Can you tell us what percentage of the sludge now makes it to the farms versus the landfill?
Sure. We are in the 40 to 50% range. We have 2 treatment facilities right now that process solids, biosolids. All 6 of them produce it. Well, Tomahawk's not producing it right now, but they all produce it, and we have 2 places where we process it. The biosolids that are processed at our Middle Basin facility, which is located there off of 69 in College, it processes the sludge to the level that it can be beneficially reused on cropland. The solids that are processed at the Nelson facility are disposed of at the landfill. However, with the new Nelson treatment facility, we'll have the facilities which will wrap up in 2029, but we'll have that converted so that we can beneficially reuse all of that. Tomahawk, we'll have digesters, and so as soon as Tomahawk goes online, we'll be beneficially reusing those biosolids as well.
Very good, thank you.
Other questions for Susan about biosolids or otherwise? All right, Susan, thank you. And again, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does staffing increase with the new plant that's coming online, or does it stay the same?
It did. No, it's a great question. It did increase. The old plant only had, I think, 3 full-time staff, and then we shared some other staff with other treatment facilities. So now we'll have 24 staff, and we just finished hiring 13 operators earlier this year. We'd hired the supervisory staff over the last couple of years to make sure that they were part of that startup process and all the different equipment. So we've got everybody hired now.
And how do you see your staffing changing over the next 10 years?
Our staffing changing over the next 10 years? Is that what you're, okay. Well, with the Nelson complex renewal, the oldest facility in our system, we're in the process of starting design to renew that facility. It does have more staff because right now there are 2 plants located there, but we do anticipate we'll be adding staff to about the level of Tomahawk. So 24 staff there as well. I think we've got in the high teens there right now. I can't remember the exact numbers. So. The other thing that we're doing as part of the integrated plan, we'll be assessing really right-sizing staff. So in terms of capital project execution, right now we're utilizing our program manager to help us fill those gaps for engineering project managers for executing those capital projects. But the idea is that we may not need those staff beyond sort of that initial hump of implementing the program. So there may be some additional engineering staff. That'll be part of the recommendation that comes out of this initial phase of implementing the integrated plan.
Last question, Mike Bain.
Susan, thank you and congratulations on all the awards. I'm going to follow up on the staffing question just a little bit. Over the years as mayor, I hear from developers that getting the permit out of wastewater to move the development forward has been a challenge. Honestly, I haven't heard that as much the last few years. So I'm hoping that corresponds with your 5-year tenure in your current position. Challenges in getting employees. It sounds like the maintenance and the operation part's good. Tell me about the entryway for development.
In terms of development, we did staff up a few years ago, which helped resolve some of those delay issues. The other thing we've actually done over the course of the last year, because reorganizing in a pandemic is one of the easiest things you can do, which is a joke if you don't know me. We actually reorganized our engineering group and put that group back together. And so part of that reorganization then helps us optimize. We're also, I don't know if you're familiar, but wastewater development advisory committee was established by the board last year, and the members were appointed earlier this year. And so part of that is to help us look at our processes and procedures and see where we can be more efficient. So we're trying to hit all the facets for how we can continue to improve that process.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I think we're now going to move to Brian Pedig with Public Works. Brian, take it away. It is 5:38. If you take 10 to 15 minutes, we'll have 5 to 10 for questions.
Or if I take 22, no time for questions.
We're watching you.
Okay. Linda, I'm going to share my screen here. I don't know if that is anything you have to do. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So our roles, we'll go through our roles, our budgets, and our responsibilities and challenges. We are probably the most straightforward department that you're going to run into, in that our role is to maintain and improve the roads and bridges in the unincorporated area of Johnson County. The cities are responsible for their areas, KDOT's responsible for the state system, and we take care of that unincorporated, or folks think of it as the rural areas. We're funded with general revenues. We receive about 12 million annually. Plus we also receive, and we've received this probably for about the last 10 years, an additional 1.5 million as a request for additional resource, we request additional money every year for our maintenance budget. We're a little underfunded there. In addition to maintaining the roads and bridges, we obviously have administrative financial needs. We also look at the noxious weeds issues in the county. We do plat survey review. We also have a dust control program we manage. And then we work very closely with our planning department on coordination of developments in the county. We also receive federal funds. We exchange those for state funds so we can use them in a manner appropriate for the county. That's around $2 million a year. So our total funding is about $15.6 million. In addition to that responsibility for taking care of the roads and bridges, we have an urban services group, and I have Kent Lage on the conference here tonight, and he manages this group. And there's two big programs that the county runs, and these are primarily for the benefit of the cities. It provides coordination and financing, and that's the CARS program, which provides funding for roads and bridges in Johnson County that receives revenues roughly, COVID has affected things the last year or so, but around 12 million that comes from gas tax, and then it's supplemented by county revenues of 4 million. So it's a $15 to $16 million program annually. It's a great program that helps the cities. Then we have our stormwater program, and that's funded with a 10% sales tax. And that's about 15 million it generates annually. We report up, like everyone else you've heard tonight, through the county manager's office, the bureau chief, into the BOCC. We don't have any additional or supplemental boards, advisory or otherwise. And just to emphasize our unique role at Public Works, we don't have fleet, transit, water, electricity, trash, parks. A lot of Public Works have a very broad scope. And again, ours is a very, very specific scope of the roads and bridges. So if you look at our inventory and where that money goes, we have about 135 miles of gravel roads. We've chip sealed 30 miles. Paved roads, we have about 240 miles. In our bridges, we have about 110 in our inventory. And I say abouts because sometimes boundaries lap on to half the road and you're counting percentages and things like that. So it's never an exact number, and it's always changing with annexation. We have a materials and contract budget of around $3.6 million to take care of that. Most of that money goes towards maintaining our asphalt road. We have a maintenance life cycle. It works on about a 15-year cycle of chip sealing twice on years 2 and 9, and then overlaying it on that 15th year. Overlays cost about $120,000 a mile. Chip seals about $15,000 a mile. So 150,000 is needed every 15 years, 240 miles. The math works pretty easy. It's actually very easy for a public works director to say, how much do I need to maintain? And preventative maintenance and all the things we do, we maintain and we improve. That preventative maintenance is our number one goal, is to take care of the infrastructure we have. And just to show you that, and I can't emphasize that enough, because we hear a lot of the time where we are working on roads and people think we're doing stuff that's not needed. And this chart shows you how the degradation of the life of a road, and once it starts to go past a fair condition, it goes down really quick. And what we're trying to avoid is reconstruction. And here's a road. This is when most people think you need to overlay a road. And this is too late. You're tearing this out and totally rebuilding it. And you contrast that with this road, which most people would say you don't need to do anything to, but you can see it's turned whitish, it's oxidizing, it's losing its bonding, and we need to go out and do something. And we hear this all the time. The road looked pretty good to me. I don't know why they overlaid it. Well, it's about the right time to do it. Our gravel roads, again, we have about 135 miles. Every 4 years, we have to add rock. When those vehicles drive over it, they grind the rock, it produces the dust, and that rock slowly disappears. So we need to reshape the roads and put rock on there, but it's pretty inexpensive. We spend maybe a couple $1,000s a year on a mile of road, gravel road. So folks often ask, why aren't we paving our gravel roads? Because it's a lot more expensive. And believe me, I would pave every road we could if I can talk our commissioners into giving us the money for it. But low volume roads are appropriate as gravel. So I can see that we're going to maintain a large inventory of gravel sometime into the future. The other part we do, you heard me talk about, is improvements. And we have a budget of about $2 million from the general revenues plus the federal funds that we exchange of about $2 million. So we have about $4 million a year to do improvements. And we do miscellaneous projects. We'll do intersection improvements, guardrail, culverts. Our bridges are, and you may have heard some of the news stories about how bridges in the rural area are in just horrible shape. Ours are in excellent shape. 30, 40 years ago, our board started funding improvements for our bridges, and we cranked through the inventory for the last 4 decades. And we have an average bridge index rating of 95%, 100% being perfect. So we're in really good shape. Right now, we're focused on those road safety improvements. And if you look at this first slide here, you see that we have an edge drop off, we have utilities, we have trees, we don't have very good drainage ditches. There's a lot of safety issues and a lot of maintenance issues. The big thing in maintenance of a road is to get that water off and away from it so it's not destroying the subbase or getting down into the actual pavement through cracks. And if you contrast what this road looks like versus this second picture, where we have shoulders and where the utilities have been moved off and away, where well-developed ditch sections that can handle the water. That's where we're spending that $4 million, or most of it, is doing improvements there. Then you heard me mention the urban services group, the CARS and the stormwater program. That CARS program was formalized almost 30 years ago, and it provides 50% construction funding to the cities. The cities have to match that. And again, those funds come from gas tax and general revenue, and it focuses on the major thoroughfares of Johnson County. And there's a reason why when you drive around Johnson County, you go from Overland Park to Olathe, and you don't even realize you went across the city boundary. And this program plays a large part in that. It's a great program. It's been very successful. Stormwater program created in '91, and it at first addressed flood management. In 2016, we completed a strategic plan, and this is groundbreaking work and a vision that the stormwater program has come up with. And they're going to look more to watershed focus versus a city project focus. And the thought there is that water doesn't know a city boundary. It follows the watershed lines. It doesn't care whether it's in Overland Park or Olathe. And the most effective solutions are often based on looking at the watershed, not at the city. So that's a major paradigm shift that the stormwater program is undertaking. They are also going to look at not just flood management, but they're going to look at quality and as well as the maintenance of those systems. When we're doing a watershed project, I'm skipping through the bullets here, we will fund the stormwater program 100% of the project. If it's a city project, we'll split it. And again, that revenue comes from the dedicated 10% sales tax. So when we talk about challenges, that's all the programs that we do in our budget and their purpose. And when we talk about challenges, annexation patterns are really creating some stressors on the county roads. The shape of the annexations have changed. We also have a lot of boundaries with the cities where there are strains on the county infrastructure. We've had static budgets for a long time. Climate change is something that we're dealing with. We're seeing rain events that are unprecedented. And then I never lose an opportunity to talk about distracted driving and how important that is. That's important when you drive. It's important to your workers that are out on the road. And we see every year more and more incidents there. Just to touch on that annexation issue a little bit, here's a snapshot of the incorporated county back in '83. We were probably just under 300,000 in population. And you can see us growing. We're mostly expanding from that northeast, just expanding south and west. And then 2009, something significant happens. You see in this area that the Burlington Northern goes in. Spring Hill continues to grow. Overland Park is in a large annexation. And there's a large island annexation of Overland Park. And then you go to our current look, and this is the current size of Spring Hill, Gardner, and Edgerton. These unique geographic annexations are creating strains as people try to get from Edgerton and Gardner to Spring Hill to K7 over to 69. And folks in this Overland Park area try to get over to Metcalf and 69. They're going across unimproved county roads. And that is creating a significant impact on the county infrastructure. We're just not set up financially to do major improvements like the cities do. So that is our number one challenge as we go into the future. And I heard you ask the question if the charter's affecting you, and we've discussed that, and the charter really isn't impacting or creating an issue that we need resolved in any way. So I'll stop there.
Excellent.
11 minutes.
Thank you, Brian. Questions about the Public Works Department for the county? Greg Smith, and if you would take the screen share down, Brian, then I can see who else wants to ask questions. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Brian, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is simply, how does the county charter impact your agency, and is there anything that you see that needs to be changed?
Yes, we do not see anything that the charter is impacting us on that's prohibiting us from accomplishing any of our goals or vision.
Okay. Eric Michelson and then Randy Hutchins.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that presentation and the great work you do. My question is, can you just speak to the allocation formula or methodology for determining which CARS projects get funded in any given year? And if it's different, which of your stormwater management projects in the cities get funded? How do you make those determinations? Because I'm sure you get requests for more dollars than you have in any given year.
We absolutely do. Kent, are you available? You could hit the urban services questions on CARS and stormwater.
Yes, great question, Mayor. Two different funding mechanisms. I'll start with stormwater management program first, since it's the easiest to answer. That is a priority-based ranking system that we have developed for the stormwater management program. So we get projects in, we rank the projects from top to bottom, and every year we just start at the top and work our way down until the funding has been fully allocated. CARS program, we developed an approach back in, I believe, the early 2000s. It's when Brian was running the program, so he knows the history of this. But CARS program funding is based on a combination of a city's assessed valuation and population as compared to the countywide population and assessed valuation. I'll leave it at that for now, but would be more than happy to go into more detail if it's needed. But I'll just leave it at that for now. So each city does receive funding if they have a project for the CARS program, if they have a project that meets our minimum criteria.
Could I say it this way? That each city submits what projects they want funded. They submit a first priority and we try to fund that. Then beyond that, if that exceeds the funding, we start getting into some of these machinations that Kent's talking about with looking at the assessed value and population and trying to divvy up some of that money. But it's so the stormwater program is by priority. We rank those, and the CARS program is the city submit a request for their specific projects, and it's essentially they submit a project, their number one priority. We try and fund that.
Thank you.
Randy, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, Randy Hutchins. Brian, question for you. We understand the urban services. Can you talk to us about the similar program to do capital improvements in the not unincorporated area and the money that's being spent?
You were a little broken up there, but I think I heard you say, can you talk about the capital improvement program for the unincorporated area?
And the budget associated with that?
Yes, there's 2 million of general revenues, and then there's 2 million that we receive from federal funds. So there's about a 4 million a year available for capital improvement projects in the county.
All right, how much of that is spent in the unincorporated area?
Pretty much all of it. Now, you heard me mention there's boundary projects, and sometimes that will get spent there. And so you could split hairs as to whether that was a county project or a city project. But
okay, how many miles of chip and seal are budgeted for 2021, and what was submitted for chip and seal in the roads in 2022? And I'm not talking in regards to overlay. I'm talking about new roads to be chip and sealed.
So we don't chip seal any gravel roads. We have an inventory we maintain.
Okay, thank you. And then one other follow-up question. I know you have a dust program that's set up. Is that something that's free to unincorporated citizens, or how does that program work?
Yeah, that's one that was started last year, and we had just a great success rate with it. 85% approval when we surveyed residents. The thought there is that the number one complaint we receive from folks in the county are the folks that live on gravel roads, and the complaint is dust. And it is tough. I grew up on a gravel road. So the county decided that we would subsidize 50% of the cost for the material to provide dust control. And that's typically about $500 to do 400 feet of dust control in front of someone's home. So the resident pays around $250 and we pay around $250. So it's a 50-50 split on the cost for the material.
Okay, how many bridges are in the unincorporated area are planned to be redone or replaced?
All of them. They go through a life cycle, about 75-year life cycle. It's so the question is how many maybe do you have in the next few years? And we have probably 2 or 3 in the next few years that we need to replace.
2 or 3 bridges?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the next just few years. And that depends. We watch them and see how long we think will last. We try and get every bit of life out of them we can. The next one, it will probably be the Flum Road Bridge, just north of 175th Street by Heritage Park. And Randy, your question of how much of that's in the county, that's a bridge that's half in the city, half in the county. We'll pay for half of that improvement. So I even though part of that bridge is in the urban area, I still consider those funds spent in the rural area.
Other questions for Brian? Brian, I think as a part of the county budget, you're a relatively small part, but I know that it's very important, both to cities through cars and stormwater, and then to the unincorporated areas on the road and bridge work that you do. So don't want to diminish the fact that maybe we get a good bang for the buck out of your department. And again, I mentioned with the others, there may be other questions that we will submit in writing. We appreciate you and your team being with us tonight. We have just a couple of minutes. If there are questions on any of the 3, I know that Aaron is still here, Brian's here, and I think Susan is still here. If we have questions that we didn't cover earlier. And if you do think of questions structurally between now and our next meeting, the sooner you can get those to us so those 3 can focus on them. Mayor Michelson.
If it was asked, I apologize, I missed it, but could I ask the same question, the good question that Mr. Smith has been asking the other 2 to Mr. Otto of the Airport Commission, whether there are any charter commission or structural improvements that might be beneficial or that have caused challenges for you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know that there's anything in relation to the charter. A couple of years ago, the Airport Commission and the Board of County Commissioners changed slightly their governing structure between each other through a memorandum of understanding, but I don't think that has anything to do with the charter in that sense. And if I may hijack, Karen Brownlee asked a question about who owns the North Supply building, that large office building at New Century. That is now a county-owned office building. It is currently not taxed, but most of the businesses, I would say about 72% of what you see at New Century and Executive Airport are taxed just like anything else. If it's an old enough land lease, at the time, state statute allowed it to be tax exempt, but that went out of play in 1992. So everything that's been built since 92 pays taxes just like it would if it owned the land it was on. And there was a question from Karen Brownlee about hangars. I'll have to think about that one a little bit more. Nothing comes off the top of my head to think about that. It really is dollars and cents and people's willingness to pay or have a public subsidy for kind of the initial construction of those hangars. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Other questions for any of our 3 presenters? If not, it's almost like we planned to be done at 6 o'clock. we'll conclude today's meeting. Again, our next meeting will be June 14th. We are, looks like going to be all Zoom on that. And I regret that because I think we need to get to in person. So we'll plan on that for June 23rd. We'll hear from Planning, Housing, Community Development, Jay Leipzig, and then Corrections, Emergency Management, and MedAct, and hopefully be able to jump really quickly into the presentations without additional, some of the plumbing business that we've been doing. If I would appreciate feedback from each of you or any of you as to whether this is what you expected, this is what you want to hear from county government. Do you want to hear more about structure, administration, operations? We're learning a lot about it. I think that will inform our discussions later, but don't hesitate to say you're doing too much or doing too little so the executive committee can figure out if there are tweaks we need to do as we go. I'm going to guess we have 3 more meetings where we're doing County 101. The next meeting after that would likely be county commissioners, existing county commissioners. The meeting after that, we'll have our former county managers. And by then, I think we'll be ready to either consider our first public hearing or to start hearing about proposed amendments, if any. Anything else for the good of the cause before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Which I know is non-debatable and no discussion, Greg. That's the one I remember because we can go home. Anybody move to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, Greg Shelton moves to adjourn.
Greg moves to adjourn.
Denning seconds.
Senator Denning seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Oppose, I don't even want to hear it, but say no. All right, thank you all very much. Thank you to our presenters. Everybody have a good week.